Hello and welcome to Section 5, Part 10, where we're going to look at implementing subgroups into our selection and into our entities. But we're in the last video that we actually broke group selection, so at the end of this we'll have all the selection methods working, so you'll be able to select individual entities, select them as groups, or select these subgroups that we're going to implement now. So we'll start with adding a setting for that. So let's go to our settings. And here we'll duplicate this setting. We'll call it allow subgroups. I'm going to default it to true. And then we're going to come to our data types. And what we need to add here, so we'll start at the group data here. So what we're going to change is instead of just assigning a member, we're still going to assign members, but it's not just going to be an asset ID. It's going to be a struct with an asset ID and a subgroup ID. So we can, when we create the groups and configure them, we can configure what subgroups they're in. So in here, we're going to create a new struct, and we'll just call it entity configuration data. And this is going to need to be a blueprint type, this one, so we can assign it in our group data in the editor. And in here, like we said, we're going to have, so the first one's going to be our data asset. And this needs to be blueprint accessible as well. And we also want to make it so it can only assign entity data. The next one will just be an int 32, and I'm going to call this index, but this is essentially what you could use for the rank of the entity. So the way we're going to code things is that I think it was the lowest index is the highest rank, so they'll be the leader of the group. So this is how you can force who is the leader of the group. And if you, like when we're doing a selection with a subgroup, you might want, like a leader in one group and a second in command in the other group, so you can have them as index 0 and 1, and then the other entities can be higher, and it'll automatically select those people as the lead of the selection when you select like a subgroup. If you select the full group, it'll be the group leader. If you select the subgroup and it's the 2IC's subgroup, he'll be the leader. Hope that makes sense. And this one will just subgroup ID. So this is where you can assign them to different groups within the group. So like if you only want two groups, you just assign a 0 and a 1 to the other if you want them in the other group, or you can have, if you have 10 entities in a group, you can have, let's make it easy. Like you've got 9 entities in a group, you can have 3 groups of 3. So the subgroup ID can be 0, 1, and 2, and you can assign whatever entities to whatever group. That's just a default constructor, so when it goes up in the editor, it'll have some data. And that's all we need there. So now we just want to take that to our group asset and make this an array. We'll need to add a forward declaration. Actually, no, we'll add an include for our data types. That's all we need to do there. So now in the editor, rather than just adding an array of data assets, we'll have this, be able to add all this data to each member as we add them. Obviously, this is going to break wherever we're using member. So if we come to player control, I've got a few errors here, you can see. So what we might do, actually on the data asset, I'm going to add a function. And I'm just going to add a function to get the entity data out of this. And that'll be, so when we're loading the data assets, I just want to be able to extract all the entity data for the asset manager so they can load it. That's what this will be for. That's all we need to do for that. That off. So where we're going to use this is in our entity loadout manager component, is what is loading all the data for our entities. It'll be on the player group data loaded. Surprised this doesn't have an error here, but it's actually appending struct here, not the assets, like we're saying, like it's saying here. So this should be an error. I don't know. I'm not sure why it's not, but anyway, we'll fix it anyhow. That's our new function that we just created. So it's going to populate this. We can append that, not the. Now I might rename this to all group entity data assets. So it's a bit more clearer. Now we can go back to our player controller. Yeah, we can close the data asset. I'll leave the data types open. We're going to add to that, I think. So let's fix our spawn locations first. So it's the generate group locations. I think we'll leave that to just pass this members. So this is passing actual members data. Yeah. So let's change this to take the members data. That'll be a bit cleaner. Grab this. That. And then in here, all we need to do then is pass the entity data to the asset manager lookup. No change there then. We probably need to do the same for the entity locations. It's even easier here. We just need to insert the entity data here and here. Easy. So now the next error should be in create group entities. And that's going to be the same thing, looking up the entity data there to check that it's valid. And here it's trying to cast that data, so that's the same thing again. Passing, we're going to make some changes here because this is starting to get we have to add a subgroup here as well. So this is starting to get pretty long. So what I might do is actually create a data struct that we can just put all this stuff in and pass it to the entity component. Because all the create entity component does, really all it does is pass most of this on. So if we put it in a struct, we can just pass the struct through. Don't have to have all this crap in our function list either. So let's go back to our data types and create a new struct. We'll call this one so it's entities initialization data. And then we just want to pass in those things that we're passing over. So yeah, I want to pass in pretty much all of these things. We actually will not pass index, and the reason for that is we're going to change this to that other struct that we had. So that's already got the index, subgroup, and the entity data in it. So we don't need the data, entity, or subgroup. I mean the data, index, or subgroup. So it'll be in this. We'll just call it config data. And we'll add a isValid check for this. And to check that it's valid, we'll check that the entity is not null. And the group isn't null. They're the two things we need to successfully create the group properly, or initialize the group. Let's create a default constructor. So here, what this is doing here is saying construct one of these types with the default constructor, which would then create this. That gives us a blank value on this when it's initialized. That is fine. Okay, now that's a constructor we can use to create one and populate it at the same time. So let's do that now. Here, and we'll call it init data, and we'll do a constructor, and we'll pass our members. So we've got new actor, the actual data itself. And then we can change our entities component now to accept none of this. And if we need to create more components in the future, we can add to this data here. So all we need to do is reference the data now rather than in the initialize. We can change that as well, pass the data. It'll be the same. And then here we'll also add the subgroup. You can see it's a bit cleaner. And we'll copy that subgroup, create it. Will need to be replicated. So the component construction, that's all good now. Yeah, that. Oh, I actually just want to put a fallback in here. For the member index that we're assigning in the data, if you just want the rank to be in the order that they're spawned, like you don't really care for rank, then we can just use the index of we're spawning it here, so we can use the index of this loop basically. And so what we'll do is in the data, if the data is set to -1, then we'll use this spawn index loop. So we just want to update the init data we just created there with a new index if the index in the data is -1. So that's all good now. I just want to come back to the entity component, and I'm going to create a group section here. So and I just wanted to create some getters and setters and things for group-related stuff since we've got like the subgroup ID and all that now. So we'll definitely need one just straight for get the group. So oh, it's up here. Oh, that was a bit weird not having that one. Move it down to here. So let's have one to get the index or whatever you are calling the index. Get subgroup. Keep it ID, yep. Might add a function here to get subgroup members, like we've done the other get members. So we'll check the group first. Oh. So we'll just get a list of all the members in the group, and then we'll go through that and remove anyone that's not in the subgroup that we're after. well, it's not in the subgroup of this entity. So this function will be to get this entity's subgroup members. So we don't need to pass the subgroup because this function is to get the members that are in the same subgroup as this member. So we need to access the other member's entity component to see what subgroup they're in. Now, one of these members that we're checking here is going to be this entity that itself, but it won't really matter. It's going to check its subgroup and it'll be the same. So it's not really worth putting a check in for it. So we're checking if the other member's subgroup ID is the same as ours, and if it's not, we're going to remove them. And what do we have to do when we remove it? Do a reverse loop. There we go. So that'll return the members in our subgroup. So now the other thing I want to do is come back to data types, and I'm actually going to get rid of this. I did a bit of playing around and it's kind of more of a pain in the ass than it's worth. So we're just going to take that out. Going to cause some errors. Actually, sorry, one thing before we go on to fixing all that. On initialization here, we should be setting the, it gets assigned soon after, but let's just find these as defaults. If you don't assign something, you can get, like say it fails to use this initializer to set them, it'll be a random memory location. It won't be a proper, it sometimes can be not a proper null pointer, if that makes sense. So assigning that, if you have a look in that struct, the isValid check covers this, that it's empty, so an empty asset. So as long as you do an isValid check, anything that's filled, like any data asset that's filled with this, will return not valid when you do an isValid check. So this now needs to be updated. This is the main reason why I deleted that selection type, because it just wasn't working out. Or it was, but there's like too much crap with it. So what we're actually going to change this to, rather than this single actor here, we're just going to pass an array of actors. And it might be a single or it might be multiple. Call it and reference. And we don't need any of this. And this down to here. No, sorry, we're going to modify that as well. So it accepts this. This will now become a for loop. And we're going to need to do it again. We're checking if the index of this entity is a lower index to our current leader index. So do they have a higher rank? Is a lower number in this case, but swap it around if you want. And then if it is lower, then we want to assign that member as the leader. That'll go through and get the highest rank or the lowest index out of the members that we pass in. So now back here, we don't need any of this crap. And we can just pass in our select members, with members. This can go. And there we go. That's all we need. Now, if we come back into here, we do need to update our selection. So in our update box selection, we're going to create group selections. We just need to fix this create group selection here. And also going to add in the modifier keys, the use of modifier keys here, so that's all working. What we're actually going to do is put in our array here. So this will be, so I want to change this, be assigned here. Now, in order to be able to use contains here, we need to add an override that accepts a group as an input for the for the entities player selection. Have a look. Got one for when we're comparing two selections, but now this is going to compare a selection to a group. I'll just duplicate this. So it's not giving us an error now, but it will on build. And we just want to make this the group. Because what's going to happen is back in here, it's going to say new pending selection, which is this player selection struct. Does it contain this group? And it's going to pass the group. So it's just how contains works, but be aware if you don't add that, it's going to error on build. If you want to see the error, just rem that out. Rem the override out, or leave it out for now and add it in later so you can see what the error looks like. And then, so now we want to create our list of selected members here. And then the way we build the selection is going to depend on what modifier key we have. Hey. So for selection, I'm not going to use all of these. So we only need to assign what we're going to use, right? So the way I'm going to work it is Shift will be used to select groups and Alt will be used to select subgroups. And we're already using Control to select multiple, but that's not assigned here. So really all we need is Shift and Alt and a default. Capture everything else. So for a shift, if this is a single entity that we have in here, but we're holding shift, we want to select this entity's whole group. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to add to our selection members the entire group members. And we're only going to do this if the group's not already added for this entity. I'll explain why in a second. Get this. So, component. Pass our selection members in, get populated. We probably should check that the group is, just to be safe. So that's the shift modifier done. Now for Alt. So in Alt, we need to check if we're doing group selections only. We didn't need to check it here because it's the same thing, right? That's what it's going to do if it's group selections only. But here, we need to make sure that if it's group selections only, we don't want to do this. So then what we want to do now is get in the selection members, we want it to be the subgroup members. So we're going to do the same as here, but rather than get the full group members like here, we're just going to get the subgroup members. So we can do. So one of the issues we're going to have here is, say we select two entities and they're both in the same group, but they're in a different subgroup. We need to allow for a selection of a full group, but by selecting two subgroups. So here, if we just leave it like the same as this one, where we just create the new group based on the selection that we're passing through, we'll only be able to select a subgroup at a time, and that might be something that you want. But what we're going to do now is we're going to handle both. So to do that, we need to check if the group's already been added. If it hasn't been added, then we can just pass this on and create a new group, which is what we'll be doing at the end, right? Down here, based on, we'll be passing our, so we can update that. So that's all this is going to do now. It's going to create our group based on the selected members we pass down. So for holding shift, it'll be a full group. Holding alt, it'll be whatever members we pass here. However, if the group's already added, then we want to add to that existing group this new subgroup for this entity. If it's not already in the thing, I'm going to lose you guys here, I could feel it. But if the group is not created, then we can just pass this subgroup and create the group. If it is created, then we want to add this subgroup. Let's just do it. Actually, that can't be I, can it? J. So we want to find the group for this subgroup that we're looking for here in our new pending list. So now we have the group, we want to add the selected members. That's the group members, the selection members. And we're going to do an add unique here because we don't know what's in there already. We could already have this subgroup in there for all we know. Right, now we need to do our default case. We are again going to check this setting, but we need to handle both cases, this and here, separately. And the way we're going to handle the groups allowed is pretty much the same way we're handling it here. So we're going to just, same thing. And we only want to do that if the group isn't created as well, because we only need to create the group once because we're adding all the members. So each time we come through this loop with a new entity and the group's already been added and it's only allowed group selection, that we don't need to do anything. They're already added. That's easy enough. But if that's not the case, then we've got to check again for group added, because we're going to handle that case separately as well. And then pretty much just need to do all this here. So let's cut this out. This is to handle our single selections. So if the group's already created, then we need to go through and add the individual members. We just won't have anyone in the selection members. So we need to identify the group again. Oh, let's comment this stuff. Now, this is probably a better name for this would be force group selection. I'll think about it. Yep, so that's now here here we need to handle the individual selection. And we need to do this here. We can get rid of the old part now. And we just need to handle this else case here. So this else case here is just to add the individual member to the selection. So as we come through this list, if we only have one entity and the group is not created, then we want to add them to the selected members list. So when the group is created, it creates a group with a single member in it. And I'm just going to add that directly. So here, I'm just going to comment as well. I hope this makes sense. It's a little bit complex, but essentially we're populating this, and this is determining whether we create the group or add to it. If we get to the end and this is false when we get to the end, then we're creating the group with whatever's been populated in selection members. And the selection members is populated in different ways based on key modifiers or settings. So now I just want to fix up some stuff here. So I want to come back to handle single selection, and because we're creating a single selection here. And I want to implement the modifier here as well. So after sort of want to do the same kind of thing. The reason for this is you can select a single member, but if you hold Alt, for example, it'll be the subgroup, and it'll shift, it will be so we've got to do more than just pass a single member through. If there's no modifier, then yeah, it's going to be, you know, an array with this one member in it, but if it's not, then it's going to be more, because the previous stuff we're doing was only for box selection. And we only need Shift and Alt, unless you want to do some other combos. So for the individual one, we just need to add that the client hit selectable. to the list, so it creates the single selection. And then Alt, we need to do the subgroup, so we've got the, keep the naming the same. So we need there, and this one will be group. I'll do a check for the group again. And I'm going to take this out, put it in an else down here. We only need to do that if we don't, sorry, that needs to be clear selections. Unless we're holding control, we don't want to do that. If we just click somewhere that's not on a unit, it's going to clear our selections here. That should be good. I think we should be good to give it a build now, if we're in trouble. So we weren't in trouble. One thing that's going to be unhappy for sure is our entity data, because we changed a variable type into here. That's still good. It was group that we changed, wasn't it? So yeah, these members are going to be stuffed. So that will just give you nothing. It won't error either. Like if I play, it won't crash. It'll just won't do anything. Assign this to our entities. And then we can set, so this is where you can set their index, and if you want the game to decide it, probably should have defaulted it to -1, hey? And then the subgroup, I'll do 2 separate subgroups so we can test it. Everything else is okay, and got to fix up all our groups now. I'll set the index on these ones so you can see it. Do it. I think the way it spawns, it'll be Stenner, so he'll be the leader, and then he'll be to the side. Oh, that doesn't really matter actually. Sorry, it's subgroup I'm thinking of. So subgroup 0, subgroup 0, and subgroup. I think these last two will spawn the way we're doing the spawning is left and right. So I think it'll have to go 1, 0, 1 for them to be next to each other. That's all it is. And then our last one. So I've got 6 members here. Let's do 3 subgroups of 2. Yeah, I'm definitely going to change that for default to -1. I'm going to do that right now. Yeah, I'm not necessarily going to do it, rebuild or anything, but let's just go to be in here, constructor. And yep, so there'll be 0. Oh, this could get a bit tricky now. Yeah, I think that'll be fine if we just go like, let's have a look. Oh, I missed one. Like, how come that's not working out when we've got 6? Okay. 1, and we'll see if their orders are swapped around. Doesn't really matter, it's only for when they spawn. Alright, so I think in settings, I've got allow subgroups but force groups, so it shouldn't matter. Holding Alt does nothing there, see? So like, that's working again, so that's good. Hey, why is this not working? I think that's that change I just made. I have to fix that now. I think that what's happening there is I took that clear pending selections out. I think I need to add that in the select in here. I think that should fix it. Oh, that's building more stuff because I changed the data asset. That didn't break things. Yep. that fixed that. Cool. Right, where were we? So let's stop that. Let's turn off the group selection now and leave allow subgroups on. We could actually, I'll show you how to do that for in this video. You can hide these. So if you turn this on, it just hides this, so it's not there. Anyway, let's turn that off. So now we can select individuals, and if we hold Shift, it'll select groups. And if we hold Alt, it'll, oh, we didn't get it right. So that's the subgroups. And if I drag over 2, I get the full group. So that's what I was talking about. If I didn't do that extra for loop or whatever to add those members, I'd only be able to select one or the other. So that's good. And you can see here that there's 3 groups in this one. So, and I totally didn't get anywhere near. It's like the opposite side. Anyway, doesn't matter. Once they start moving, you can line them up next to each other or whatever. So now in our entity settings, I'm going to actually rename this. You don't have to rename it. It's kind of annoying me, the naming. Redirects, that's fine. So now we can use this setting to hide or show this one, and we'll do that in the meta. And then it's called edit condition is the, and we can assign that. So it can essentially check this type. If this is true, it'll allow us to edit this. This will keep it displayed, and then you can add edit condition hides, which will completely hide it if it's false. We want it to be the reverse. I might have to do, I'll put quotes around this because in spaces. I might just have to do, it doesn't let me do a not. So I'm just going to do a equal to false. I'm going to do a full build because I've had, when you change U properties, tends to require a full build, not a live build. In our settings now, there we go. So if we unselect it, shows it. And then if we wanted to just not hide, but just grey it out or whatever, we should be able to just do like that. Anyway, just the next to the show, but all our selections should be sorted out now. We're going to do one more part to selection, which will be, I'm just going to show you and add to the framework the double click to select all of the type next in part 11. So if you double click on an archer, it'll select all the archers that are on in your viewport. Thanks for watching. See you there.